Hello and welcome to the fifth and finalish episode of the BHS podcast. I'm Eddie and I'm with my co-hosts Joey and Jalil,
Hey guys.
Christopher Khwairi,
Merry Christmas.
Mark Al-Khazin, and Rawad Eid.
Yo.
And before we begin, this podcast is going to be a little different than the others. Basically, we're going to be taking this time to do a couple of things. We want to reflect on our IB and school experience and how we're feeling as we're coming close to graduation and finishing off. We also want to talk about the podcast a little and what we want to see happen to this podcast as time goes on. We do have a guest today. Give a round of applause to Ivan Andrea.
Hey guys. Yo.
And
Thanks for having me.
thank you. And the reason we have him on the podcast is because we didn't want today to be a reflection from the IB standpoint, but rather from the general school standpoint. So if you want, Ivan, you can give a brief description of yourself.
Okay, hey guys, I'm Ivan and I'm a senior, obviously like the others. However, I'm not an IB, I'm in LP, the LP program. And we're quite different than the IBs, we have different curriculum and all that stuff, so yeah.
So we're going to be starting off by just talking about how we're feeling and how this whole experience, these last 2 years, especially with the pandemic and most of it being online, and how it's made us feel. And obviously we'll be doing that from the LP standpoint as well. I guess I'll begin by saying that it's been a little rough. When you first hear about IB, you kind of get excited. It's kind of glorified a little in the beginning, but you start to hear from people that actually IB is going to be really tough and etc, and you're gonna have a tough time coping with it all and with all the studying, and if you really want to do well, you're gonna have to study a lot. But then another half is people saying, no, it's not that, you just need good time management. And to be quite honest, the time management part was very tough for me throughout these past 2 years. I was studying a lot every single day just to keep up my grades and to do well in the IB program. And I'm sure that if I had a better time management, it may have been better, but at the same time, the load from IB is quite harsh, and if you're not prepared to do it, then it might not be the right program for you. Yeah. But that being said, I don't think that IB was a complete waste for me at all. I think that overall I've gained a lot from it, and even though all the work and all the pressure that was put on my back because of the amount I had to study and the amount I had to work is in a way sort of worth it. I've got into a good university with reasonably low effort. I'm gonna have the rest of my education career set out for me because of this, and all in all I've just feel like I've become a lot stronger as an individual because of it.
Yeah, I would agree the same thing. Like they always say, if you're ready for the hard work, take IB, because in the long run, you'd always look back and say, I put in all this hard work for it to be a safe and a lot smoother journey into university. So like you can go straight into your major, go straight into sophomore, don't have to go through freshman. And my personal experience, I thought it was a very fun, however, a bit of a tiring experience. You know, it's nice to have your friends near you, your friends to experience this with you. But as always, when you have to be serious and when you have to put in the hard work, try your best to never like slack off. You may slack off a bit, it's not a big problem, but take one step at a time. So when you have a couple of projects, what I did was I did one project, one IA. We had internal assessments at a time. I finished one and then I submitted it and started the other. Other people may disagree. Other people did them simultaneously, but I focused on each one individually. And at the end of the day, I managed to all submit them, and I feel very confident. And I feel like I've gained a lot of knowledge and I've gained a lot of experience, and I feel very ready for university. I feel like it's not something very stressful like a lot of people would say moving from high school to university. But I am very thankful as well for this IB journey. And yeah, that's it from my part.
Well, for me, I think this is more of a pessimistic approach, but I mean, it's already been said countless times because of certain circumstances, pandemic, Lebanon's current situation. I don't think that we received the entire IB experience. So in some way it was underwhelming. But in the end of the day, you have to be grateful that you are receiving education under these circumstances, given how a lot of people in Lebanon specifically can't even receive an education given the current circumstances. And even though that we got most of the perks of being IB, as you guys mentioned with the universities, etc., for some reason to me it didn't feel as rewarding finishing. But maybe that's just me, and I think it's because of, like I said, the pandemic and how we experienced our IB program. There are so many stuff that we were not, how should I say? We should have basically experienced stuff differently than we did during online. But no one can 100%. Control what's happening.
Yeah, of course.
I agree.
We have to be grateful in the end of the day, which I am.
I want to say that you're right about not finishing the year in a fulfilling way almost, because we weren't so ready for the exams, but at the same time the fact that we didn't do them just kind of left the whole program on a shallow note, and we never really were tested on what we'd learned this whole time. We never really got to see how much we actually learned, but I'm sure that even though we were never properly tested and even though we may never see our results in numbers, we'll always have them at heart, and I'm sure they'll be useful in the future, especially with our academic careers.
Yeah, of course, and the experience that we gained through our projects, it's gonna be very beneficial in the future. So I feel like we haven't gained the maximum experience that an IB student would have gained before the pandemic, but we gained, I think, enough or more than enough experience to carry on our journey ahead.
Yeah. Chris, what about your experience?
I think it's pretty similar to what the rest of you guys have already said. I had issues with work ethic before coming to IB. My first year of IB I spent doing basically no work, but towards the end the urgency helped kick me into overdrive, and it helped me sort of change the way I did work and change the way I saw work, and that was extremely helpful. And I think as well, like the rest of you guys said, the experience I got doing the work that I did and how at times it was strenuous or very detailed, I think will help me a lot. I think I can't fault IB for this, obviously, itself, since there was no control over it, but the pandemic really did kind of dumb things down. We couldn't properly do group 4 amongst many other things, and doing scientific IAs where we had to be in the lab was very rushed, and it was very strained as well. But I think all in all, I'm all the better for it. I think doing IB was good, though for the most part I didn't really expect everything that happened, but I think all in all it's positive.
Yeah, nice. What about you, Mark?
Well, I'm just gonna say I should have failed most of the classes, but I think mainly because of online classes it didn't really help, and I think the only thing that pushed me through all of IB was surrounding myself with the right group of people, like my friends here. I'm really grateful for all you guys. Studying with you guys, I'd have questions, I'd come to you. Obviously, for you future generations, if you have questions, you should go to your teacher as well. Just if you have those smart friends of yours, it's nice to keep them nearby. And you can build proper relationships because of IB. And I built a lot of relationships I never thought that I could have. But besides that, curriculum-wise, it was fun. I liked the journey. It was really difficult. I didn't really take the time management thing seriously until grade 2, the second year, and that's when I noticed yeah, that I should have done this last year, but it still worked out fine. And yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I want to add something
Very
to.
nice.
Sorry, Ivan, I'll let you go in just 1 second. Eddie said that if you want to join IB, there's going to be a ton of work, and that is true, but you're always going to find comfort among your friends. They're always going to maybe not take the stress away, but there's comfort in knowing that people are on the same boat as you. So you're always going to find help.
Absolutely. I think it was my yearbook quote where I said that the one thing you need in order to pass all of this and to get through all of it is a really strong support group, just to fall back on. Anytime something bad happens, you studied really hard and you just got a really miserable grade, or it's your 7th draft of your IA and you just don't feel like you can go on, you need a support group that you can talk to about it, and a lot of people are going through the same thing, so you're never going to be alone, and it really helps to have that.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Yvonne, since we talked about our IB experience, can you tell us about your LP experience?
Okay, so this year was pretty interesting because it showed me a lot of things, especially because of the pandemic. So obviously LP was hard, just like IB. Yeah, everything was hard this year, all curriculums. But what I saw was like apparent is a case of, the grass is greener on the other side. So IB had their exams cancelled and they didn't like that because they couldn't put their academic performance test and all that. But us, the LP, the school year's done for almost everybody, but we still have exams in 2 months from now, and we're envying the IBs because they had their exams cancelled, and they feel like they should have their exams, or at least their ability tested a bit more than it was, because all their studying went to waste. So to future generations who are picking between IB, LP, or any other curriculum, you're gonna hear a lot of, oh, this is harder, oh, this is easier, or this is for stupid people, this is for smart people, or do this if you want more money later on, or whatever. But I realized that they're all different for each person. You know yourself, you know what the LP program is, you check what the IB program is. It's not about difficulty. Difficulty comes with your knowledge of things. If you're really good at English and high level maths and all that, you can go to the IB program and take the HL courses. But if you're good at memorizing things, or Arabic, French, all that stuff, you're better sticking to the LP. There's no concrete decision that says this is harder, this is easier. So don't listen to someone that says, oh, this is harder than this is easier than this, you should do this. Make your own decision based off whatever curriculum you want, and find your strengths and work on them. And that's basically the advice I give to the younger generation.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah, sure.
Would you have felt like if your official exams were to be earlier than what they are right now? So I think your exams are towards the end of July. If your exams were towards like the mid-June or the end of June, would you have felt like a bit more relaxed?
No.
Is it the delay in time?
No, the problem was that we didn't get the proper education we needed, and the online classes and everything made them so much harder. So it's good that he postponed them, but we would have rather wanted, like I said, we would have wanted the outcome you guys had, which is
try to
cancelling
specify
exams.
who's he, so that there's no
he is the Minister of Education that decided that we should have exams.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's a rough experience. We wish you the best of luck, honestly.
Thank you.
Like we feel like we hate to say that like we're done, but we wish you the best of luck as always, and we're always here by your side if you ever need help,
I
support
understand
wise.
when you guys say that like your abilities weren't tested, or you studied all for nothing. I get that. I definitely get that, and you guys do have a point in that too.
Yeah, but in the end,
and not only
sorry, Joey, but in the end, it wasn't. We were the ones that made that decision. We didn't really think that we could take the exams at that state. The pandemic, maybe it was possible to study during the pandemic, and I was on a lot of online forums at the time with a lot of people saying, oh, it's quite easy, and even with the pandemic you have a lot more time because you're indoors more. it's not really like that. The pandemic took a huge mental toll on me, and I can't speak for others, but I know for a fact that a lot of other people went through a tough time because of it and were not really able to study as much as they possibly could have in the weeks coming up to the exams, or we thought we had exams. So I started cramming, and with all that cramming, I didn't think there was any way that I'd be able to finish everything in time for the exams. So yeah, there was definitely a big problem there. We are in a way relieved that there were no exams, but obviously there is another side of the story, which is where that was coming from.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, 100%. And also we were given, there was a system that was given by the IB, two different alternatives. So like the exam route and non-exam route. And we felt that the non-exam route would have been fair in a way to test our abilities through our projects. So like our projects would have been taken as our like official grades. We felt that as IB students, we felt like this was fair for us and that we could put our full potential in our projects. But like what you and Eddie said, they didn't test our full potential. But at the end of the day, we're all thankful as always.
I want to go back to a point that Yvonne mentioned, and there is a huge stereotype in the school that IB is a lot stronger of a program than LP, or a lot harder, or anything like that. And I just want to applaud you for saying that it's absolutely not true. I know that the LPs can sometimes take twice the amount of subjects that the IBs are taking, and that alone can just be a lot of just way too much to handle. Even though we might take a subject more in depth. I mean, taking, what is it? How many subjects do you take?
13
subjects. That's
Wow.
really crazy. So there's no way that anybody can ever say that one program is harder than the other. I've seen this guy's math, and it's basically the same stuff we've been doing it as well. So there's no argument to be made there.
But the thing is, bro, it's like the point I was making is that I don't want someone to be convinced, like a younger person, to be convinced that they say, okay, IB is harder or LP is harder, and they make their decision based off that.
Absolutely.
Because I think for different persons, different curriculums apply, and you can play off your strengths on the different curriculums. So don't listen to anyone, listen to yourself. That's basically the advice I give you.
Yeah, exactly. Not everyone's the same.
Yeah, exactly, because not everyone's the same.
Especially now.
I agree that
exactly.
there is a stereotype, and obviously, like Yvonne's saying, each person has his own curriculum. But the sad truth is that the Lebanese program has always been more chaotic, and that's not the school's fault.
It's
That's not the
definitely
students'
outdated.
fault.
It's very outdated.
So that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you're right in that. But sometimes I see that Lebanese students would rather stay in the LP program instead of going to IB, and they say they
That's
do
completely
worse
fine.
in the IB. So that's why I was saying,
Yeah, 100%.
However,
and like,
oh yeah, sorry, Joy.
yeah, no, I was just saying, like, if you were to give, like, each one of us, like, one statement to the younger generation, so like grade 11 or like grade 10 now, that are coming up, maybe deciding whether to take LP or IB or IP, what's like one statement you would give to the younger generation?
Just do it.
Yeah, I already gave mine about the.
Gave your. Yeah, what about you, Eddie? What's like one statement you'd give to the younger
I would
generation?
tell them to just please don't stress out. I know it's tough, and I know I didn't even follow what I'm saying right now, but I wish I had. You don't have to stress out that much for any program in the school. You will do fine, even if you fail a test or two, even if you get a couple bad grades, you'll still pass, you'll still make up for it. You can still do anything that you really put your mind to, and if you just don't stress about it, you will absolutely do fine.
Nice,
That's
good,
true.
Yeah,
I want
very
to
nice.
back Eddie there. Yeah, that's completely true. Like I'm an example. I'm a pure example. I failed multiple tests in both years. I'm gonna tell you one of my worst grades in my math mid years. I got a 2 out of 7. That's not so. That's one of the worst grades. That is the worst grade that I got that entire year, and it was my mid years as well. And and I passed. I ended up passing because I didn't stress on it that much. My friends thought that I was stressing on it, but I wasn't. I was taking it chill. I was calming myself down. I was making sure that I didn't get to my head, because it's, even though it's a big test,
never gave up.
Yeah, exactly. I don't give up, and I just keep on studying. As I said, I stuck to my friends and I studied well. I didn't panic. That's all.
Yeah. If I were to give a statement, I'd just say, if you were to take any program, Lebanese or IB, be as organized as possible. Don't try to attempt in a way to not have like an overload of different things. Even if you have an overload of different subjects, take one step at a time. Your teachers may be upset from you that you're taking it slow, but the most important thing is you're learning from the project or from the test that you're taking, and that you're doing it as efficient as possible for the long run.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I would say.
That's pretty smart. Like staying organized removes so much stress from you instead of cramming it down.
100%.
I just want to add something to what I said. It doesn't mean that like you shouldn't stress on anything, or like you shouldn't like study or anything. Of course study, and of course try to get as well as you can, but don't stress too much. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't want to set the wrong message.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, 100%. So, Chris, what about you, bro? What is one piece of advice you'd give to the younger generation?
I don't know if it's so much advice, and I'm probably echoing a bit, but it's just you are more than capable of doing whatever you want to do. There is no metric for measurement, especially academically. Intelligence is not fixed. You can always learn. IB, any curriculum, is not some enormous bar that you have to surpass, and it's never a contest. Focus on yourself, do what makes you happy, and you are absolutely more than capable of doing anything you think you want to do.
That is very nice. I agree 100%. Very nice.
Give this guy valedictorian.
1/7 math mid-year.
No way. Rawad, what about you?
I mean, I would say that no matter what program you take, make sure you surround yourself with the right group of people, and don't use anyone for your own benefit, and obviously don't let people abuse you for their benefit, because there's a nice sensation that you feel when you and your friends make it to the destination rather than just yourself and you're there all alone. So
fact.
make sure you surround yourself with the right group of people, and be nice to everyone.
Yeah.
That's very true. Very nice. I agree 100%.
Nice, yeah. What about you, Khaz?
Yeah, absolutely.
Me,
Kazan already gave his.
yeah, I give
I
like
thought
multiple
I just
ones.
reiterated from you. He already
Just
used?
do it, bro. Just do it. Just do it.
Just
Okay.
That's
do
why.
what?
Nice.
Just do what?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Okay.
Just do it, bro.
Nike, hire this guy.
And by the way, if you don't
got
mind,
it.
I'd like to add something.
Go for
Because
it.
listening to what you guys said, like your advice, it's very positive and like really optimistic, and that's really good. And if every student implemented what you guys said, I think the school would definitely be a better place. But I want to tell like some people that are listening that school's not gonna, like, it's gonna be really ugly sometimes, and many people are not gonna do like what the boys here are saying, the good advice. It's gonna be really ugly sometimes, and there's gonna be a lot of competition, and but in the end you'll pull through no matter what. Nothing is worth it to like break down over or miss school over. It's gonna be ugly, but in the end, you'll get to the end. It's like it's just a small phase of your life.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
very nice. Very, very nice. Yeah.
So I think we've talked enough about our experiences in school, and for the rest of the podcast, I kind of want to discuss, well, the podcast itself. And what I mean by that is I want to discuss where this podcast came from, how it affected us, obviously the huge elephant in the room, why we had to stop, why we're continuing right now. And yeah, I just want to start off by saying that this podcast was never meant to be anything really big. It was all just some blip. I think it was a shower thought that I wanted to start a podcast with my group of friends. Didn't have to be about school, didn't have to be about anything in particular. I just wanted to start a podcast. But then I realized that if anyone here is not doing IB or is younger than the IB age, there's something called CAS, which stands for Community Activity Service, which is a requirement for IB. And one of the requirements for CAS is to create a project that lasts a couple months, and it needs to fill all the requirements, and it's quite a thing to delve into, so I'm not going to do that right now. But I think it's important to say that this podcast probably wouldn't have made it where it was without CAS, because it was a CAS project, and because we were able to call it the BHS podcast, we were able to get some guests that I'm quite proud of. Miss Jessica Sibali, we had some classmates, Natalie and Tamir, we had one of the top chiefs from our scouts group, and that's basically where the podcast started. But I don't just want to talk about the physical aspects of the podcast and how it was made. I also want to talk about our experiences with it and how it all flowed and what our obstacles were. And I think I want to let someone else talk about this for a bit.
Talk about what?
Our experience.
I dozed off.
Our experience with the podcast.
It was nice. It was nice.
I know my voice is soothing, okay? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. It was even though the first few tries, it was not a failure. Could have been better. But like we learned and like we moved. So yeah. I'm just trying to start off. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this podcast, as much as it had so much CAS in it, and we did it for the reason of CAS, I felt this podcast with time felt more than just like a CAS project. I felt like us reaching to different people and us like promoting on social media, and I felt like every couple of weeks we had this routine of doing the podcast. I felt like it was very enjoyable, and as like an experience that I would look up to, or like I would like look forward to every couple of weeks. And unfortunately, you know, with the stress of our submitting our projects, we couldn't really record much podcasts, so that's why we had this huge gap.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I felt like it was a very nice experience, and like being around you guys, talking about different topics. We talked about music, we reviewed different memes, that was funny at the time. We had many different guests, like Eddie mentioned, and all in all, it was a great experience.
That was
a good time.
That was the best part.
Let It Go. That was a very good time.
Into the unknown, yeah.
Into the unknown, my bad.
But yeah, I would say that if you could, like, being around with your friends talking about these topics is so relaxing, and especially as a podcast, having the name of the BHS podcast, talking to a large amount of people, it felt like something to be proud of. Yeah. And that's how personally what I felt.
Oh yeah, one of the really big things about the podcast was that our first episode hit around 250 views on YouTube, which was pretty crazy, because we had no idea who was watching this thing. We didn't know there were that many people in the school, and then we started getting comments from around the world, other IB students congratulating us and telling us that what we were doing was really cool. So there was definitely a lot of positives to the podcast. Just doing the experience, I learned a lot about editing, a lot about public speaking, a lot about cutting out awkward moments. There are a lot of awkward moments that you guys will never hear.
Yeah,
obviously we make it sound a lot better than it actually is, but we do stutter a lot, we do mess up, we do have brain farts.
I do no such thing.
Hasn't never
okay.
But also, yeah, Joey mentioned this briefly, but it was kind of a toll on us, on me and on everyone else. We did have to stop because IB was just a bit too much. we finished our last episode by the end of the first summer of IB, and when we got back, we were already starting our EEs, we were already gonna start most of our IAs, and we just did not find the time to record, which is something that I think we may have been able to avoid it if without obviously the Lebanese revolution, without the pandemic, without Corona, we may have been able to avoid all that. But at the same time, I think it was sort of fair that we had to drop the project for a little.
For me, for the podcast, I never admitted it to you guys, but I was actually extremely nervous and shy the first time around. But then, over a couple of podcasts, I warmed up to it, and actually that impacted me outside the realm of the podcast. As in, I feel more courageous, I guess, and bold to say certain statements. And I actually mentioned a lot of those stuff in the cast interview, which is another requirement from IB.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
For Cass, I don't know. A lot of the time I saw Cass as a chore.
No, not about Cass, about the podcast. How was your
Yeah.
experience with the podcast?
Yeah, no, I was getting into it.
My-
As in, the podcast was no such. The podcast was no such thing. I never saw the podcast as something that I absolutely had to do, and I was like, ugh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to deal with it. I always had fun, and I was like, I was terrified. I still am terrified. It makes me really nervous speaking at all like this, but I think it changed me for the better, and I think as a cast project, I've learned a lot from it.
Yeah, nice.
So, if we want to sum it up, kind of like we did with our last couple of years of school, how'd we go about that? I guess I'll start. I would say that the podcast was really beneficial, and more than beneficial, it was just kind of fun. So I really had a good time with it, and I hope that the people that are listening had a good time with it. I know podcasts can be quite boring, and yes, our views did start to drop after like the third, fourth episode, which was expected. It's fine, but it still remained fun. And even though we weren't getting as many views, we were happy to know that a couple of people were chiming in, and that what we were doing was actually having a small impact. So it was all good.
Yeah, I felt like the feedback we've gotten from the different IB students or from IB students in our class, as you said earlier, was very beneficial to us. And yeah, I just enjoyed it a lot, and I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed it as well. I think like talking about different topics was very... I personally learned a lot from these podcasts, not only from public speaking and social media, how to like control social media pages like Instagram and like YouTube, but I felt like it made me feel more confident in myself, and I felt more knowledgeable in topics like music, or in we talked about multiple topics. We talked about the scouts with our chief. I learned new things as well. And when we brought in Tamer and Nati, they gave us some interesting facts, and all in all, it was just great. It was so beneficial. I think if you are ever given this opportunity, or you ever feel like starting a podcast, do it. Even though you may not get the views at first, or you may not feel very confident in yourself, see where it goes. Because, when we first started this podcast, we felt excited at first, but then we were scared, we were nervous. We were like, are people going to listen to this? Are people going to be interested in us just talking? But I feel like if you're given this opportunity, go for it. And enjoy yourself, I enjoyed myself completely. And that's it.
For me, I think there is a sense of pride in it, because we took this simple idea and we manifested it. And more than that, we delved into many topics, like Joey said, from music to the world outside. But where the most pride comes from is the fact that has Vermana High School ever done a podcast? We're the first people to actually do a podcast or something similar to that aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like the pride you feel in that sort of accomplishment.
Yeah, like
That's
no matter how many future generations make podcasts from Vermana High School, we're the first ones who did it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
You know, in fact, like, do
Yeah.
you know any school that made a podcast? I don't know.
I
Any
don't
school
probably
that's
is
done
out
a
there.
There probably is not.
No, in
maybe
Lebanon.
not in the. Okay, yeah, Lebanon. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe not.
So you're like
We
the
don't
first
know.
in Lebanon. That's even bigger.
Well, we don't even know that. but
Hopefully,
yeah,
I
sure.
guess.
You could say.
No, you probably are.
I honestly just like everything about the podcast, from advertising it to editing it to planning it to doing it, just everything. It was a blast. I enjoyed from the start to the end. And
Same here,
What,
same
what about
here.
Chris?
Same.
Tell us.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as everyone else. It's a soiree with the boys. You know, it's a
Hey.
soiree with the boys, and I wouldn't. You know, I trade the world for it. I wouldn't for the life of me miss
So
miss a
hard.
single episode of the podcast.
You touched my heart.
Thank you. Yeah.
So on that note, I want to make a quick transition. We're not making this podcast for no reason at all. We're sort of making it to discuss our legacy and to discuss what we want to see happen to the podcast as time goes on. As some of you might know, there are a couple of newsletters, or it's probably just one, the Speak Out, which has been a sort of tradition. And we kind of want to see the podcast become a tradition as well. And if anybody here is listening to this and would like to continue from where we started rather than starting from scratch, you can contact any one of us. We will probably leave our email, our information in the description of the video, all sorts of stuff. We'll definitely make sure that anybody who would like to continue this will be able to, because this will definitely be our final episode. And I'm just very happy with what we've come up with and what we've put on the table. And my hope is that even if anybody's doing this, let's say for a cast project, if anybody wants to do this for a cast project, they most certainly can. But even if it's not for that, my hope is that this will be a continued podcast, and I'll come back to it a year or two later, and I'll see some new kids talking about all sorts of random things, and I'll think,
Yeah, that would be nice.
wow, this is our legacy. We created this, and I'm so happy that we did, because it's a lot bigger than us, and it's a multi-generational thing.
Yeah, honestly, I would feel so happy to see this podcast continue, and I hope that the future generation can enjoy this amazing experience. I'm telling you from my experience, and all the other guys I know will agree that it's just a nice routine to have to do this podcast. It's enjoyable to reach to other people for guests or to talk about global matters. It's just fun all in all. You learn a lot. So yeah, so anyone could take over. We're not restricting this only to IB, to anyone, but don't miss out on this amazing experience. That's what I would say.
If that's all we have to say, does anyone else want to chime in, say something before we end it off?
It's a pretty good podcast. I listened to it. It was pretty nice being a guest as well.
Yvonne was our
Let's
biggest
see.
fan, so we had to have him on
even
the final
even just
one.
listening to it, man.
Would you believe it if I told you someone actually asked me a couple months or weeks maybe after our final episode before this one, why'd you guys stop doing the podcast?
That's awesome.
And he's not even in the country.
Wow.
Damn.
Oh
I'm
wow.
gonna give him a shout out. Shout out Bobby. He knows who he is.
Yo, shout out,
Bobby.
Bobby.
Shout out.
Keep it moving with Babish, bro.
Well,
We
this
love
one,
you.
Yeah, and
this one
hopefully
goes out
people
to
who
him.
take over this podcast, if anyone does take over it, hopefully they can bring it to new heights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Hopefully.
It's gonna be a
Sure they
bit
will.
tough when you start off, but you'll get the hang of it, and I'm sure that any one of us can help you guys out if you ever need. So on that note,
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to all you guys for making this possible. Thank you to the IB program and to the LP program and to our school experience. And thank you to Miss Jessica, Mr. Richard, and every single person that made this possible, because this was really a great experience and we are pretty proud of what we've done. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry about Finland.
Thank you.
That
Thank
one-
you.
That
thank you.
one's for all the day one viewers. Okay. Peace out, guys. It was really fun.
All right.
Obediently yours.
Kisses.
Wrap it up.
See you soon.
Uh,